Hi, Kirsty. You're an iconic voice in the world of electronic music. Your ethereal vocals that blend seamlessly with atmospheric soundscapes has made you a beloved figure in dance music. With countless collaborations and solo releases, you've built a body of work that has cemented your place as a legend of the community. It is my honour to welcome you to the House Culture Podcast today.
Wow, that's very kind. Thank you.
No, you're most welcome. I mean, you totally deserve it. Really want to talk about your entire career, but we always start at the beginning. So, can you tell us, you grew up in a really musical household, right? Can you take us back to those kind of early years and tell us what it was like?
Gosh, well, music was always in our house. Actually, not in the very beginning, because my father was away a lot when I was born. He was a prolific session musician, so he literally got up at 7 in the morning and didn't get home till about 12, and so I didn't see much of him in probably the first 3 years of my life, And he even told me there was one time where I just ignored him like he was a stranger. And then eventually he built a studio in the back garden. I had a little shed studio. And my earliest memory is going into his studio, and he would always cover my ears when he played stuff. I remember that very vividly, actually. He was always trying to stop my ears being damaged, and he was very big about that right from the very beginning. And then when I was about, I think I was probably about 2.5 or 3, he bought this tape recorder home. And to put ideas down and things like that. And he asked me to sing something. So I think I was singing some nursery rhymes, and he was doing a jingle with a friend of his called Roy Tempest, and it was called Simple Little Things. And he was trying to get me to sing it, but I could hardly even talk. But I've got that tape recording, and it's really interesting because it's the first time I ever sang or spoke into a tape recorder. And then he played it back to me, and I was absolutely fascinated. And I think that was the beginning of my obsession with tape recorders and sound, and and also getting to know who you are, through the voice. And anyway, so fast forward, eventually we moved, and then Dad built a studio in the top of the house. We had this sort of attic space, and we could hear him like bashing through a wall with a hammer, because he realised that there was some space behind one of the eaves, and so he ended up converting it into a music studio. And I fell asleep every night listening to my father compose. And it was at the time when, he had all those really cool synthesizers, and he even was one of 3 people in the UK to have a synclavier, which it was quite a bit of gear.
Yeah.
God knows what happened to that, but I wish he left it to me. But it was amazing, and there was times where he would be doing these beautiful arpeggiated pieces, and Dad's musicianship was very emotive. And I'd be lying there, drifting off to sleep, and it was very comforting, actually, because I loved it when Dad started working from home, because he was around.
Yeah.
And but But sometimes he would change the chords to a major chord or something. He'd be on this nice little, and I'd go get out of bed, go up, say, "Why did you do that?" And get back to bed. But I think that's it. It all. I'm an audio learner. I can't
Mm.
read music.
Mm-hmm.
I used to cheat when I had my piano lessons because I learned things more quickly
Yeah.
by listening to something and then repeating it. So
Yep.
that's the way that I learn, and which is a bit annoying in some ways because I really wish I could read music and
Mm.
play, but that's just not how it's panned out for me. But
Yeah.
and then my grandmother was an opera singer
Oh
and a
wow.
stage performer.
Uh-huh.
So she was, whenever she used to come over, she would do a little performance.
Yeah.
And my brother's a very good piano player.
Oh,
And my
amazing.
son,
Uh-huh.
who's now 22,
Mm-hmm.
he just got a first honorary bachelor degree in film music.
Oh,
And
incredible.
he may be going to LA to do an apprenticeship with Hans Zimmer.
Oh,
So I'm
amazing. Wow.
Yeah, I can't tell you. It was such a proud moment,
Yeah.
and the sad thing is, my father always said that Ike would be the one to carry the torch because of
Mm.
his talent. He's very similar to my dad musically,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 years ago, sadly, my father had a stroke,
Yeah.
and he was locked in. But I was able to tell him, that Ike had managed to get into Leeds College of Music,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just wonderful. And then this year he graduated. So
Incredible.
just
A real
honestly,
dynasty being developed here. So such you're surrounded by all this inspiration from a very young age, and like you say, being lulled and almost subliminally being taught music, all this wonderful things happening above your head in your father's studio. I mean, did you ever feel when you were growing up that there was like a pressure to join like the family business as it was?
no, I never felt any pressure. In fact, my dad said, "You don't want to get into the music industry." He actually tried to talk me out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I the singing thing, I always had this desire to sing because it made me feel good. And
Mm. Mm-hmm.
um, I don't think I'm a great singer at all. I need to work on my live performances. I'm more of a in the studio with the headphones on in my own little world, and
Yeah.
I'm actually very difficult to work with. I can't just go into a studio and start singing or working with someone. I like to figure things out myself.
Yeah.
But Dad, he used to have these session singers over to record some of the songs he was writing. And
Mm-hmm.
there was one song that he wrote called Why Let It Go.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to beg him. I said, "Oh, Dad, please, can I just have a go? Is there any tape left?" And he'd go on then, have a go. Because I'd be listening to it and learning it.
Mm-hmm.
And his dream was for Barbara Streisand to record that song. And
Yeah.
eventually she did. And I'm a
Wow.
huge Barbara fan. My dad's a
Uh-huh.
huge Barbara fan. And honestly, that was such an incredible moment for him to
I'll
have
bet.
his
Yeah.
icon,
Uh-huh.
singing that song. Anyway, there's a recording of me somewhere singing it with the original lyrics, and it's
Yeah.
bloody terrible. It's absolutely horrendous because, and I can detect a little American accent as well,
Mm.
because I was just trying to find my way. And
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
of
I learned
course.
how to sing by copying all my favourite singers,
Yeah.
and then eventually I found my own voice.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I was a bit of a chameleon, and I still am in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, and like in those, growing up then, did you have any kind of lessons to help you kind of draw this out of you in terms of like, breath work and all that type of stuff in terms of being a
Yeah,
vocalist?
so in 1988, I
Mm-hmm.
was on the tube, and I don't know if it still exists, but there was a magazine called Metro, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
I just picked up a copy and was flicking through it, and it was an advertisement and a little article about a lady called Helena Chanel.
Okay.
And it said, it was, the article was about how she helped Paul Young. I don't know if you're aware of
Yeah. Yeah.
who he is,
Yeah.
but Paul Young had quite a distinctive sound, and he actually wrecked his voice. Something happened, and he couldn't sing anymore.
Yeah.
And she was the one that helped to bring his voice back, and heal the vocal cords.
Yeah.
And she also trained Annie Lennox and Marty from what was that band called in the in the 80s?
Wet. You thinking Marty Perro?
Wet, Wet,
Yeah.
Wet.
Yeah.
I remember him going in or coming out just before I went in. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I rang up my dad and I begged him. I said, please, would you pay for me to have singing lessons? Because I couldn't afford that at the time.
Yeah.
I was working in London. I was a secretary, doing like temp work mostly because I used to work for a week and then take a few days off, and I quite enjoyed temping. So he said, "Okay, well, we'll give it a go." And then I phoned Helena. I was really nervous, and she said, "Well, come in and let's see what you sound like."
Yeah.
So I went in, and she did a few scales with me, and she went, "Oh, an undamaged voice. I would love to work." She was very posh,
Yeah.
and so I went to work, have lessons with her,
Yeah.
and we would tape record each lesson, and then I would go home and practice. But she taught me, one of the things that I really gained from was how to, some of the high notes that I can hit. It was, you have to imagine that the vowel sound change. So if you're singing the word heart, if you sing heart high, you can't go heart. You have to think hut.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. She goes, if you imagine it like that, then you'll hit the note. And she said, it's very strange. Sometimes, because my tuning goes off a bit, I really struggle with that. And I don't know whether it's because I stuck my head in bass bins in the early 90s. I've probably lost a little bit of the kind of pitching. So I have to imagine it.
Yeah.
But wow, she taught me a lot of things, and I still have those tapes, and I'm slowly trying to get them off the tapes into my computer so I can continue doing those amazing exercises she taught me.
That's amazing. And I mean, so when you're listening to those, how do they kind of make you feel? Because sometimes, people are very self-conscious, or they look back on things and think, oh, that's something that I want to move away from and move on from, or are such a different person. You really kind of digging into these, and they're really helping you by the sounds of things. That sounds like a good thing.
Well, Helena, when I was singing certain things with her, she said, no, don't sing it like that. Don't. So I did rebel against her a lot because I liked the way certain things sounded. But she, oh no, if you sing like that, you'll damage your voice. But it's okay to do it for the odd recording, and then you can repair. But I don't know. It's I've learned not just from Helena, but Judy Zook. She was a really good mentor for me. So Judy was someone I grew up on. I used to absolutely love her album. My dad had her albums, and also really loved her work. And when I left Opus 3 and I wanted to pursue my solo career, for it was just the natural progression of things. And one of the songs I wanted to do was For You by Judy Zook. It's because I love all the harmonies and everything. But I said, I don't want to touch her work unless she approves it and she's okay with it. And my manager at the time managed to get hold of her, and she'd seen me on the Jonathan Ross show. She goes, oh, I love Kirsty. Yep, I'd love to invite her around. I was like, no bloody way. Like, she was my icon.
Yeah.
So I drove to Surrey, went to her house, and we became instant friends.
Oh, amazing.
And, I said to her, your top lines are unbelievable. I'd love to
Yeah.
work with you. So she wrote, she started to write top lines for, dance music, and I
Yeah.
hooked her up
Yeah.
with like BT and Hybrid,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then eventually she wrote Just Be,
Mm-hmm.
that I ended up doing with Tiesto, and she played it
Yeah.
to me in the kitchen as a demo, and I said, give me that song and I'll make it massive.
Yeah.
And initially I just did a little clip of it. It took me bloody ages to get it right, by the way.
Yeah.
She's like Judy can sing 2 takes and she's done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's just one of those natural performers. She's just unbelievable. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we went to her studio and I recorded it over and over and over again. And then I felt like I wasn't getting it. And then I was getting hungry, so we got a curry, a takeaway,
Yeah.
had the
Yeah.
curry, and then Paul, her partner, came in. He goes, I hate to say this, I've just wiped the DAT. I've wiped it by accident. I went, no. And then
Yeah.
Judy said, stop. She goes, you can do better. Get in there
Mm-hmm.
now. So I'd had some curry, my blood sugars were in order, went back in and I
Yeah.
did it in 2 takes, and that was it. And
That's
then the
it.
magic happened,
Yeah.
because you can
Yeah.
sing things over and over again, and then you kind of become robotic. But
Yeah.
it's not, singing a song is not just about the technique;
Mm-hmm.
it's about doing it thoughtlessly. And when you get to that thoughtless point, then something else comes, and then the spirit happens, the
Yeah.
third party, and you're in it. Then
Indeed.
it's yours. That the
Yes.
song that someone else wrote becomes your own, and I'm very, very grateful for all those experiences. It's been
Well, yeah,
amazing.
indeed. Yeah, you've been, working with the best there. I mean, in terms, you have already mentioned having your head in a bass bin and stuff like that, and you're so intrinsically linked with electronic music and everything that, that happened in the early rave scene and things like that. So, how did you first discover the rave scene in the late '80s, early '90s? What was your kind of entry point to that?
Well, initially, it must have been around '88. I could see ravers appearing,
Mm.
just that they were everywhere, and I just thought it was stupid. I was like, what is going on? Like people taking drugs and like they're idiots, wearing dummies around their necks and
Hmm.
silly hats and clothes, and I just didn't get it initially because I was into uh, you know, labels like 4AD, very
Yeah.
morose,
Yeah.
depressing, deep kind of music.
Yeah.
Because I've got quite a melancholy side to me. I don't know where that comes from,
Mm.
but I overanalyze things. And I get a
Hmm.
bit caught up in my head sometimes, and then something happened where I had a boyfriend at the time, and I think he lived in Cornwall, and he was coming up to London, and he said, I'm going out with my brother tonight. And I felt really pissed off. I was like, well, what? You obviously don't want to see me.
Yeah.
And then my mate Mark, we used to call him Muddy Boots. That was his nickname because he used to carry the hod. He was a builder.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he had a great voice, and we tried a few little projects together. And he goes, why don't you just come to a rave, Kirsty? It will really cheer you up. I was like, yeah, oh, okay then. And because I was in a bit of a mood anyway, I just, found whatever ravey gear I could find and something colourful. And then we got into a convoy from London. We met in a pub in London and then ended up somewhere in Oxfordshire.
Hmm.
And I think it was sunrise.
Yeah.
And parked the car, and then I could hear this boom, 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 boom. And I was like, oh, I could feel the energy. And
Yeah.
we got through the gates, and it was Little Louis French Kiss, and suddenly it was like, bam! People everywhere, smiling, happy, whistles, pajamas, fairground rides. It was.
Uh-huh.
I was just like, it hit me like I can't even explain it. And then I just started dancing, and I didn't stop the whole night. Danced till the sun rose, beloved sun rising. So it was obviously the year that
Yeah.
that was in, that charted, and Little Louis charted,
Yeah.
French Kiss,
Mm-hmm.
and all the other tracks in between. And
Amazing.
that was it. I was in. That was
Yeah.
it. This is
Uh-huh.
where it's at. So
Yeah.
I hung out with a bunch of people through Mark, his brother, and their friends, and
Mm-hmm.
we all went raving together to various different commercial raves.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were illegal, and then uh, at the time, I was clean eating. I was, because I'd had a bout of glandular fever
Yeah.
about a year before, and I was very, very lucky to have the opportunity to see this naturopathic doctor
Mm-hmm.
who helped me to clean the glandular fever out. He said, you need to eat grapes for a week.
Yeah.
So I was very mindful of, respecting my body, and
Mm-hmm.
eating well, and I was also very anxious as a person. I had a lot of what is now called anxiety.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm a child of the 70s and 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and things were very different then. And
Yeah.
I was speaking to a guy the other day who came to do some work on my mum's house, and
Mm.
turns out he started the Exodus movement in
Yeah.
Bedfordshire.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to him, "You've got some incredible stories. I'm going to definitely start a podcast, because these stories need to be heard
Uh-huh.
uh, about the state of politics back
Yeah.
then." And
Yeah.
there was a lot of walking wounded
Mm.
that ended up becoming ravers because of
Yeah.
like child abuse, and
Yeah.
we had horrible teachers in the sense,
Yeah.
the schooling system was very unregulated,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of the reasons I got into it was because I needed to dance off a lot of these traumas that I'd experienced from a very young age,
Yeah. Yeah.
through the schooling systems and the strictness, and
Yeah.
whatever. Some of them didn't make it because they went
Yeah.
too far down the drug route, and so the rave scene for me was definitely dance it off, heal it, and blah
Yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I had to move back home for a while just to recover from this. It was like having a chronic fatigue
Mm-hmm.
kind of syndrome
Yeah.
as a result of Epstein-Barr, which most people get at some point in their life, and you have to constantly clean that out because it can turn into autoimmune disease and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I got into how food can heal from a very young age because I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So people used to come up to me and they go, "What are you on?" I said, "Apples." I, I used to eat apples all day because I got
Okay.
high on being alkaline.
Oh,
And then
no
I would
way.
take guarana. I don't know if you've ever heard of
Yeah.
guarana,
Yeah. Yeah.
stamina. And my eyes were like this because I was just, completely fresh and clear. And people were coming up and asking me what drugs I was on. And then I'd say, "Oh, I've just been on apples all day." And then they'd be going asking all the drug dealers if they had any apples. But yeah, eventually I did dabble a little bit. I have to be
Yeah.
honest about that. But
Mm.
things are very different, and I was always extremely careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was always scared of, because they put all the horror stories out. Leah Betts,
Indeed.
and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
she actually drowned herself. Yeah,
Totally, yeah, and that was it. And it was because it was this scary new thing. It was basically just a sense of, don't do it. It's terrible. It can kill you. Rather than be like, actually, if you are doing it, this is how you kind of manage yourself when you are doing it, to like look
yeah.
after yourself. Yeah, was
I mean, I
frightening
could
time.
talk for hours about just that alone,
Yeah.
but I have to be a little bit careful.
Well, look, I mean, I know that you were part of Spiral Tribe at one point as well.
Yeah. So I was living at home, and then I started to heal, started to feel better, and
Mm.
um, I needed, you know, I needed to. I was working through a lot of resentments, I guess. I was rebelling against my family
Mm-hmm.
because they decided to join the Mormon church, and I
Okay.
didn't want to be a Mormon. I didn't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't resonate with me, is the right
Yeah.
word. And I had issues. I had a lot of issues about that, and resentments. And I felt at some point that I was like the black sheep of the family, because I wasn't a Mormon and they were, and
Mm-hmm.
respectfully, like I guess for Dad it was probably his AA, because they don't drink and smoke
Yeah.
and have coffee, so he needed something to stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when you're told not to do something, you do it more.
Yeah.
Anyway, my friend Tim, he he said, "Oh, why don't you come up to one of the squats? You'd really like these people," because
Mm-hmm.
he was living in a squat in Kilburn, called the Schoolhouse. It was an old schoolhouse, and so I went with him to go and meet these people. And I remember walking into this candlelit kitchen because there was no lighting or anything, and
Mm-hmm.
there was all these really nice people sitting around this massive table. And one of them was Mark Harrington,
Mm-hmm.
who came up with the Spiral Tribe concept.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was also highly into this meditation called Sahaja Yoga
Mm-hmm.
with a woman called Shamatajina Maladevi, and she taught me how to meditate and how to understand the chakra system. And
Mm-hmm.
so they were talking about this spiral tribe thing, and I associated that with the awakening of Kundalini energy and
Yeah.
balance and connection and everything. So we all had something to add to the pot,
Yeah.
and it was very exciting. And then they were putting on an event in this squat, and Mark said, "Would you like to help me decorate the basement?" And I felt like I had a purpose. I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So we painted the
Yeah.
basement black, got loads of UV lights, and then I helped him cut all these fluorescent bits of cardboard, different colours, and we were making squiggly shapes
Mm-hmm.
and circles within circles, and sticking them all over this basement. And then we got a sound system in, and I remember Mixmaster Morris was there. Bjork turned up with her crew. I was
Yeah.
like, because I was a big Sugar Cubes fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to listen to the Sugar Cubes when I was
Mm-hmm.
typing as a secretary, because it kind of
Yeah.
helped me keep going. And obviously, she's got an incredibly unique
Yeah.
voice as well. I was
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh my God, it's Bjork!" And she was tiny. She
Yeah.
was so little with this
Mm.
huge jacket on, and we had our own bar, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was called Detention because it was in the
Yeah.
schoolhouse, and that was the start of it really. And then
Yeah.
I just hung out with them for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was quite intense, to
Yeah.
say the least.
Yeah.
Eventually, I shaved my hair off,
Mm-hmm.
not because I wanted to. Um, it wasn't to make a statement. It was I just got fed up of walking down the road and being wolf whistled at. That those
Yeah.
times were still very misogynistic,
Yeah.
and used to get hassled a lot. So I
Yeah.
started wearing boyish clothes, and shaving my hair off was probably one of the most amazing metamorphoses, is the only way I can describe it. And
Yeah.
also being 21 years old,
Mm-hmm.
at the time. It was it was wiping the slate clean, you know, like just being a blank canvas. I just wanted to be in my own spirit rather
Yeah.
than a visual thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then eventually, I thought, well, I need to soften the look a bit because it looks quite hard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite a hard look. So I used to make jewelry out of Fimo, you know, that plasticine stuff that you can bake in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
oven.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I used to make these little beads and trippy necklaces, and I used to sell them to people on acid, and that was how I made my money for the week. And
Yeah.
then I
Yeah.
worked at a health food shop at the weekend, and he would always give me things that were going out of date. So I lived on practically nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I stopped working, but I was still selling and hustling
Yeah.
and doing all kinds of odd jobs here and there. But
Yeah.
I put these beads, I stuck them on I had a bit of a tuft at the front, and I put these beads on and stuck them on with super glue. So I'd thread the hair through and then stick it with super glue.
Yeah.
And it looked absolutely wicked.
Uh-huh.
So I remember going to a rave one night, and there was all these UV lights, and people going, "Oh my God, it's amazing."
Yeah.
And it started a bit of a trend. So
Yeah.
I was doing other people's hair and sticking beads on their hair. And it's just so silly, but really good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Great time. So, I mean, it is a look as well. I mean, when you kind of blew up with Opus 3, and, you know, it was really, you know, a very, very striking point of difference, that look that you had with the flower and the hair, and, you know, it was really, really memorable. I mean, in that era, how did you get involved with Opus 3 and the guys there, and get singing on It's a Fine Day when that blew up in 92?
Well, in those days, we didn't have, because we were squatting, I was living in squats, and I would go from one squat to the other. You know, if something got a bit intense, I'd go somewhere else. And
Mm.
around that time, I'd moved into a squat in Ladbroke Grove, and I got a letter from my mum, and it said, "Call me now," you know, because we didn't use phones in those days. We didn't have a phone
No.
connection in the house,
Yeah.
which was great, actually. I bloody loved it because you just went with the flow. You know, you weren't at
Yeah.
someone's beck and call all the time. You didn't have to respond to text. You had a lot of
Yeah.
time to be in your own head, and you
Hmm.
had to make an effort to
Yeah.
communicate with
Yeah.
people. But
Yeah.
every Sunday, I would ring my parents just to, you know, say
Hmm.
I'm okay. But I get this letter from my mum and said, "Call me now." So I phoned up, and then Dad picked up the phone. He said, "Oh, Kevin's been trying to get hold of you. You need to phone him." And Kevin and Ian and Nigel, that I'd met them on the scene. And
Yeah.
so I rang up Kevin, and he picked up the phone, and he said, "Oh, we've got this track." And Ian dug it out of his box of records, and it was the a cappella of Fine Day by
Yeah.
Jane Lancaster and Edward
Hmm.
Barton. So I think it was Jane and Barton. It's a Fine Day.
Yeah.
So we've sampled it, and we've put it together with this dance track, and we think it would really suit your voice. They knew that I'd been singing.
Hmm.
So I was like, "Oh, great, send it to me." So I gave them the address I was at, and the next few days I get this tape, and it says Opus 3, it's a fine day. Stick it into my
Hmm.
tape machine. And around that moment, do you remember those brain machines? Have you ever heard of a brain machine? You used to put these
Uh,
glasses on and these
oh.
headphones, right? And then it would do
Mhm.
these lights, and then
Yeah.
the sound and the frequency and the lights, you'd literally go into some kind of weird hyperspace naturally because it did something to your brain.
Yeah.
And I remember putting that on and listening to It's a Fine Day and just thinking, oh my God, this is the song. This is it. I love it. And because things were starting to get quite dark around that time,
Hmm.
late 91, the music was starting to turn a little bit. It was getting quite messy,
Yeah.
and people were getting a little bit screwed up on the drugs as well. It wasn't fun
Yeah.
anymore, and
Yeah.
not for the crowd I was in. It was getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and I was starting to really question why I was still there. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What is the message that we're trying to give here?
Mm-hmm.
It was around the time where a mansion was squatted in Surrey, and the chandeliers were being smashed and made into jewelry, and
Mm.
I just thought, I don't know if I want this anymore. Like, there's more. And Fine Day for me was like a hand grabbing me, pulling me
Mm.
out of a situation and plonking me into another one.
Yeah.
And with all the meditation that I was doing, I would go to these crazy raves at the weekend and then meditate during the week
Mm-hmm.
in this damp room with a mold chandelier, because
Yeah.
we were living in really scuzzy places, but it was free.
Yeah.
But I got on a bus the following week and drove up to Sunderland on the National Express, because that's where the boys lived.
Mm-hmm.
They did a makeshift studio in the kitchen, and I used to have all my little rituals, and I put like crystals in a stone circle so I could stand in it and feel protection, so I could channel to the universe and all that stuff. and then I had to record it, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really hard, actually. I was singing it like they said, no, try it like this, try it like that, try it with more of a lisp. And
Yeah.
I was getting frustrated because I really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really wanted to get it right.
Yeah.
It wasn't happening. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it. I could get the notes. I could get, like I was saying earlier. And then I was getting frustrated, and then I was too in my head. And that's why my voice, when you're in your head, your voice closes up because you're overthinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, John the hairdresser came round with his little boy, and most hairdressers they're very empathic,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a very quiet man, but a really good listener, and he just had a presence, and he was there with his little, very well-behaved boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that they were sitting in the other room while I was in the kitchen, so I thought, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to stop thinking, and I'm going to sing it for his little boy about what it's like to be in a field with the sun rising at 3, 4 in the morning, midsummer, and everyone's connected. And then it happened. I did a couple of takes, and then the spirit came, and that
Yeah.
was it. Then it was mine, not mine, but
Yeah.
ours. It just
Uh-huh.
happened. And then the boys sent some cassettes out, and then I think, yeah, they sent it to PWL, Pete Waterman
Mm-hmm.
label.
Yeah.
And they sent it to London, which was Pete Tong at the time.
Yeah.
Pete Tong championed it, played it on the radio.
Yeah.
Pete Waterman cheekily white labelled it and sent it out to all the clubs before we even did a deal. And then the
Yeah.
next thing we know, he's slamming his fist on the table, apparently, saying, I want that record. Because Kylie had just left. She'd gone to deconstruction.
Yeah.
The whole PWL thing was not cool anymore.
Yeah.
All that poppy kind of stuff they did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking for the next big thing.
Yeah.
And the boys said to me, Pete Waterman wants this record. I said, no bloody way. We're not signing with PWL. That's not cool. We're going to go with London. But it was 3 against 1. They said, no, we want to go with PWL because they've got everything in-house.
Mm-hmm.
They're well connected globally,
Yeah.
etc., etc. And I said, oh no, it's so uncool. But anyway, I went to the studio, met Pete, who I didn't think was cool at all
Yeah.
initially. But I did get to know Pete very well over time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I really love him
Yeah.
because he's a very clever guy. And
He
he
is.
also,
Yeah.
he produced Past the Duchy by
Yeah.
Musical Youth,
Yeah.
which I didn't know. So he'd
Yeah.
done it. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I ended up, he came to Japan because I had to do loads of I mean, it literally, I went from living in a squat
Yeah.
to having the sun knocking on my door. And I'd open the door with, my T-shirt and pants on, like half awake. And they would they'd stick a microphone in front of me, go, "We've come to do an interview with you." And I was like, and I hadn't even woken up. And it was really weird.
Yeah.
And I had to ring up Peter and go, "The sun here, why did you send them to my house?" And they said, "We didn't. Shut the door now. Don't speak to them."
Yeah.
So it literally happened, within a couple of weeks. It just
Yeah.
went nuts.
It's
And it was
wild.
frightening, actually.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, I'd
really
imagine.
scary.
I mean, yeah, you're a young lady and you've just been thrust into the spotlight in this way. And it's changed like that. Yeah, it must have been wild.
Well, I had my tools. You have to have some kind of armor
Yeah.
to cope with that amount of attention.
Hmm.
And I was very lucky that I had a fantastic support network within the yoga I was doing,
Yeah.
which was very nurturing, very loving, and I had that protection. And I don't think, I would just say every time I went on stage, Mother Universe, you do everything, I do nothing.
Hmm.
And then I could do it. If
Yeah.
I went on as little Kirsty, there's no bloody way I could have done that.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
But it just worked for me, whether
Mm.
it's just an imaginary thing, I don't know. But it got me through
Yeah.
quite a grueling couple of years,
Yeah, I bet.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it was what an incredible experience. But I also knew when it was time to withdraw,
Mm. Hmm.
because it affects your mental health.
Yeah.
Mental health wasn't even a thing back in
No.
my time.
Mm.
Didn't exist.
Hmm.
If I said to my dad, "Dad, I feel depressed," he goes, "Depression doesn't exist."
Yeah.
That's what his reply was. He goes,
Yeah.
"Forget it, crack on, just get over it." I mean, he's a Yorkshireman, so But by the time I was 24,
Mm.
I was a bit fucked.
Yeah.
I was like, shit, I've got problems. I'm
Mm.
burnt out. My adrenaline was in overdrive,
Yeah.
and I knew when it was time to withdraw and
Yeah.
to take that mask off. That
Yeah.
armor. I needed to be vulnerable and to
Hmm.
really get to know where I was at that point in my life.
Yeah.
So I went to Cornwall, found a little pink cottage, found a local guy that had a studio, and started on my Poor Me album, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
It's called On Ultimate Things, and yeah, I just read
Yeah.
loads of books on psychology and lots of Carl Jung. Went
Hmm.
on lots of walks, and eventually got a little whippet called Rowley, and yeah, did an album with Mark Pritchard, who
Yeah.
was in global communication at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a really crazy life, actually. Come to think
Yeah.
of it, yeah.
It's an incredible journey that you've had, and like kind of moving forward just a little bit, because this is a bit of a selfish question for me, but I'm a massive fan of BT, and obviously you've
Okay.
worked with him before,
Yeah,
especially on Running Down the Way Up, which is one of my
yeah,
all-time faves. I absolutely love that track. I mean, just
yeah.
talk to me a little bit about working with BT, Brian, and how you first came across his work, and the behind the scenes on maybe that track as well.
Well, Brian was in the charts with Vince Cavello,
Hmm.
uh, with "I'm Loving You More," I
Loving You
think it
More,
was.
yeah.
I'd never heard of him,
Mm.
but I had friends that were fans of his, but I wasn't really familiar with his stuff. And at the time, I can't remember how I first. Oh yeah, so there was a guy, I can't remember his name, down in Cornwall, who was bit of a talker. You know, he was a mover and a shaker, and you know, he was dating a lady called Marcy Webber, who was managing Brian, and Brian knew about Fine Day, and Marcy she was a New Yorker, like with a very brash voice, and oh my God, you know, Brian, you need to work with Opus III, and he was like, oh, I'd love to, and so he called me, and we chat for about an hour and a half on the phone, like instantly connected, but I was under contract at the time, so I couldn't work on anything at that point. But we hung out and got to know each other, and we ended up going out for a meal with Marcy and her partner, and then we'd missed the ferry home, because I used to live in a little village called Badinnick. So we'd missed the last ferry, and if you missed the ferry, you couldn't get taxis there.
Yeah.
It was you know, very remote. So we had to walk back, and it was, what I didn't realise was it was 15 miles to do the long route. But that's how we got to know each other. We just went on this mad night walk, 15 bloody hours, and it was great. And and then he wrote a track called "The Road to Lost Withiel," or something Lost Withiel, based on that walk.
No way.
So that's how we first met, and then yes, so I was hanging out with Judy, and she played me some of her stuff, and one of them was a track called "Dreaming." Now, if you saw the original "Dreaming," she looks like Stevie Nicks with a wind machine on her, and it's really kind of rocky. And I said, that's a really lovely song. I'd love to try it differently. So I got in the studio with her again and sang "Dreaming" the way I visualised it. And then I played it down the phone to Brian on his tape machine message. And he was working with Hybrid at the time.
Yeah.
And he heard the top line and then immediately put the strings together that he'd done with Hybrid.
Yeah.
And that's how "Dreaming" was born.
Amazing.
And then I was eventually free to do what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I could then work with him.
Yeah, brilliant.
Running Down the Way Up happened in Wales. We were at Hybrids again, Mike Truman's place, because he lived in the middle of nowhere in Wales. And I wouldn't sing for about 2 days. They were knocking up these backing tracks, and I just couldn't open. I wasn't feeling anything. It wasn't coming. And then I had all these bits of paper with random poems or words I'd written and botched together. And then they were playing the track and thinking, when the fuck is she going to open her mouth? When's something going to happen? And it wasn't happening. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, yes. So I had this poem called "The Outcome." The lowest senses in me revolve around, derive their meaning from my self-will. And I was like, oh, na, 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 na. And I said, I think I got something. And so Brian got got me some headphones. He's like, at last, something's coming out. And then I started singing. And, Brian is a very clever, very scorpionic, he's got a lot of signs in Scorpio. He's quite a dangerous magician. And if I'm going to be right in saying this, he was very good at getting stuff out of people.
Yeah.
Very good at getting the goods.
Yeah.
And those were, really good times for us. But, unfortunately, things don't always have a happy ending.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into that.
Okay.
But, I wish him all the best. And, there you go. But we did some of my most favourite moments were working with him. really
Yeah.
great stuff. And, you know, maybe one day, I don't know, but I've moved on now. I'm working with the love of my life, who is
Yeah.
Adam F. And
Yeah,
hello.
indeed. But well, firstly, I appreciate you taking us through that story. If, like you say, if it's not happy memories to look back on, but now,
Well,
like moving forward, go
they're
on.
mostly happy memories. They're
Mm,
mostly, but I'm very willful, and I like to be treated fairly,
mm,
when it comes to, the way that the business side of things is dealt
yeah,
with. And I
yeah,
will kick up a fuss
yeah,
if I don't feel that side of thing is being honoured.
yeah,
It's a respect thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, all power to, vocalists and singers and songwriters, because sometimes, especially in the dance music community as well, it's often the artist that gets the props rather than someone that might have done the vocals on the track as well, because they make a
Trust
big
me,
part of it.
it's dire. It is
Yeah.
dire, and that is why I speak out on
Mm,
my behalf, but not also on behalf of all the other women that
absolutely.
I've met and guys. It happens to
Yeah.
guys too.
Yeah.
The music industry is savage. It
Mm,
is very questionable, and that's why Adam and I've set up 181 Recordings,
yeah.
which was initially going to be called Myceliate. And we have this guy called Fu who he's a technical biscuit. He's got his business. He's an amazing logos. He does animations and
Hmm.
he's incredible. So he did a logo for Adam and I for Myceliate, and
Mm.
it was an M and an 8, and it just looked like mate. And me and Adam said, no, it's not going to work, mate. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And then Adam goes, actually, it looks a bit like 181. And I said, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, it does,
Hmm.
doesn't it? So I Googled 181, and it's an angel number. It's a really powerful number to
Mm.
do with, I don't know, success and
Hmm.
abundance. So hopefully, if we carry on, the way we are, we'll be able to trickle through nicely and steadily and
Yeah.
be independent and own
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
copyright. And that's why
Yeah.
we're doing it this.
Amazing. Well, look, we're at the point in the interview where we are going to talk about the playlist choices for the House Culture Perfect playlist. I mean, this is something it exists on Spotify. It's every single one of our guests has submitted a track to, 5 tracks to this playlist based on the different themes that we have. And what I can tell you is because you're going to be episode 78 of the show. So yeah, we're getting up there. And this playlist is pretty vast at this stage. So I can tell you what the themes were. Do you want me to remind you of the tracks that you've chosen as well as we go? So yeah, I'll call them out. And by all means, just tell us, we always say, don't overthink it. Just first thing that pops into your head, and why with this theme was that something that you thought about. So we always start off with a catalyst tune, something that got you into or opened your ears to electronic music. And I'm so happy that you've chosen this because it is an absolutely brilliant choice. It's although I'm going to completely mangle the guy's name because it's Manuel Gotsching,
Oh
E2
yeah,
E4.
yeah.
Which for those who are listening, it's been sampled by Sueno Latino, into that brilliant Balearic classic. But this original is like a foundational electronic music track. Like, what was your experience with that, and why did you choose it?
Well, because I think it was one of the founder tracks of that genre.
Mm,
I
hmm.
can't even remember what year it originally came out in. Might have even been the late 70s or
Yeah,
early
I think
80s.
it
But
must be. Yeah.
it had such a profound influence on that kind of scene.
Mm,
And I think it's important for people to know about it. And it's a really, you know, I think about my daughter's age. She's 19 now, and she goes, "Mum, listen to this track." And we'll get in the car, and she'll Bluetooth the track she wants to play me, and then she'll never listen to it to the end. she'll
Yeah.
flip on to the next one. I say, hang on a minute, I was listening to that. Like you wanted
Uh-huh.
to just, but listen to, the kids, they think so fast now, but I think
Yeah.
that one's, it's at least 10 minutes long,
Yeah.
and you can really,
Yeah.
I love to listen to something and really go into it, really fall deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a skill, to listening.
Yeah.
It's a skill that's being lost on many levels. Everyone wants to talk, no one wants to listen. That's sad,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that track. Well, the whole album, and
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's something that everyone should be aware of. It's a historical piece of music.
Yeah.
He only
Yeah.
passed
You're
away
so right.
3 years ago, in
I think, yeah,
2020.
it was recently. Yeah. Yeah. There was
Yeah.
a lot of stuff around about it. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic listen. And like you say, yeah, it really kind of envelops you. You can really kind of just go deep into it. It's wonderful choice. Thank you. Okay, so the floor filler you have chosen, obviously,
That's a hard
Adam
one.
F. Circles Revisited, which I tell you what, I mean, and it's such a classic anyway. But I love the fact that this revisited version kind of just teases everything out that bit much more and lets it breathe, rather than being
Well,
like that, you know.
I've been there while he was revisiting it, and
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds a bit. When you hear something over and over and over again, especially when they're working on it,
Yeah.
it's supposed to drive you mad. Check, 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 check. But it doesn't. It's. I first heard that track on a mixtape probably around 95, I think it was, because I used to
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of driving up and down from London to Devon and Cornwall, because that's where I was living at the time.
Yeah.
And you had to have a really good mixtape to
Yeah.
listen to, and it was the year Hell Bop was in the sky. It looked like
Uh-huh.
a little window in the sky and this light coming through this portal. I don't know if you remember that
Yeah, yeah,
meteorite,
yeah.
but it was there forever. So I always associate Hell Bop with Circles, and some of the
Mm-hmm.
other tracks are on the mixtape.
Yeah.
And it's people always that list know Circles, they remember the check 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 bit and doom 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 doom, but not many people know how it goes. The
Yeah.
when the bass goes off on a massive tangent and it just explodes into this incredible edit.
Yeah.
And oh my god, Adam and I are very similar in that we've got boxes and boxes and boxes of archive, zip
Mm-hmm.
files, tapes. He had to recondition loads of his gear. Some of it was going a bit mouldy in storage, and
Yeah.
so very, very slowly we started to recondition the roads and um, his vocoder,
Mm-hmm.
and which was a bloody nightmare actually, because the vocoders are very temperamental, especially this old gear when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
There aren't many skilled people anymore that can fix these bits of gear,
Yeah.
and but we were very lucky that we did find some very good, passionate menders, the repair shop,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then it was just thrilling to see him, because he's added some new bits to it, and I even did a little cameo
Mm-hmm.
keyboard thing on it. So
No
I'm
way.
part of. So I'm kind of blowing our own trumpet, but it is a dance floor filler.
It is an absolute classic. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Cool. Okay, so a Sunsetter, a perfect track to soundtrack a sunset. You've chosen "Sweet Harmony" by Liquid.
I just love that tune. Why? Because it just brings back happy memories of uh, you know being in a field with a load of people dancing and having that amazing connection. And I saw them PA that. I don't know which event it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the big raves,
Yeah.
but I don't remember the year, and I don't remember what it was called, but I remember seeing them PAing it, and I just love it.
Yeah, it's great. Great choice. Okay, a tearjerker song that fills you with emotion. You've chosen your own song, Kirsty Hawkshaw, "Orange." It's on. You've already mentioned that it's on your On Ultimate Things album. Just give us the background of why that's such an emotional song for you.
All things that are good have anything that goes to extremes. There's always going to be a tragedy at some point that comes out of any scene, and any. I wrote that in 97 or 98. Between 95 and 98 was the big come down. A lot of the ravers that had been burning the candles started to. I know a lot of people got into harder drugs. It was like a big depression, actually. People were just either burnt out or, getting to, that point in life. I think between the age of 25 and 30 is quite a challenging time for anybody.
Yeah.
And the phone rang one day, and I was working on my album, and I can't remember who it was. It was one of the Orbital friend. I think he was a close friend of Orbital.
Yeah.
And I get this phone call, and it said, "I'm really sorry to tell you, but Sally's died." And I went, "What?" And she was a very cheerful, bright, creative sister of our scene. She used to do a lot of the photography for artists like Orbital and Spooky and the cool kind of crew. And sadly she'd OD'd, just one random night, and I just couldn't believe it. And I remember thinking, how I'm going to remember Sally as her cheerful self. I'm not going to allow, her death to be a tragedy. I want to do something, say something. And because she was such a crack, the last time I'd hung out with her, I helped her with some makeup, because she used to work for Trans Europe Express magazine. It used to get like a square magazine with a CD in it, and it had a flip book. So each one, you'd flick the pages and you'd see a little animation. And she wanted to do one on a space hopper painted orange. So I said, "Yeah, I'll come help you." And I painted her face orange and her arms and everything. She did the photo shoot. And then she went to wash it off, and it wouldn't come off. She'd used the wrong paint. I don't know what she did. It wasn't face paint. It was something like, it wouldn't come off. She goes, "Well, I'm going to go to the pub anyway." So she went to the pub, all dressed in orange. It took ages for it to come off.
Yeah.
And, we used to scream joy at each other. Joy, because we liked Ren and Stimpy, and, we were really silly together.
Yeah.
So I at her funeral, they played Lord of the Dance. And it was just awful. I think she was only 28 or 27.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And she was a huge loss for all of us. And I just wanted to write something in the moment. And I can't really listen to it, but, I know it's touched a lot of other people. And, we all need something to cry to. And crying is okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was put on a compilation called Sally's Photographic Memory. And everyone contributed to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Sorry, I just brought everyone down.
No, no, don't worry. I mean, thank you for sharing that stories with us as well. I mean, I think it's like you say, it's good to talk about these things and remember people in their best possible way. Um, I mean, we are moving on to it's the last tune now. It's a massive change of pace. This is the you know, you're playing somewhere or the crowd are asking for one more. What do you play? And you've chosen High State of Consciousness by Josh Wink.
I don't know why I chose that one. I think,
I tell you what, it's an absolute banger.
yeah. Well, where was it? There was a club, and I think it was in Holborn that we used to go to on I think it was on a Thursday night. Oh, or it was Heaven on a Thursday night.
Hmm.
But they always used to play that one, and it always used to go off.
Yeah,
It's really trippy.
yeah,
It's got is it the Roland 303 bass
yeah,
line?
yeah,
There's just something about it. It's just, yeah,
yeah.
it's a
Just
bit
twist you
crazy,
up.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a great choice. Cool. And so that was the last tune, and this is the final question that we always ask our guests at the end of the interview, which is this is the House Culture podcast, and obviously we're house culture. It's not just about the music in our eyes; it's about the whole cultural movement of a scene. It's about the fashion, the art, the people, the personalities, as well as the music.
Mhm.
When you think of house culture and dance music culture and what it's brought you in your life, like what are the main kind of elements of this scene and this culture that you see it as?
Well, it's a coming together, isn't it? It's um, that's what it was for us and our generation. We didn't have all these distractions. We didn't
Hmm.
have this. It's almost like you're a slave to your phone now. You're a slave to your own projections.
Hmm.
It's we're becoming a. I hate to say it, but it's almost like narcissism is very accepted these
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
Like showing off and this, that, and the other. And for me, my experience of this culture was, you learn more about yourself when you are with others, and they reflect back what you give. You give, you receive. You fuck up. You make mistakes. This, that, and the other. But we dance together. We come together and we dance together, and we rose above loads of problems and issues, and you know things that I see now that I just don't understand. Why is that happening?
Yeah.
I thought we moved on from all that shit.
Hmm.
Sorry to swear.
No, no, you can say
Uh,
whatever you want.
so it's like, you know, it's baffling. It's
Yeah.
baffling, and I think that if I could remove the internet with one click of a finger
Yeah.
and go just for a day, actually,
Yeah.
let's not be too extreme. Maybe a couple, maybe a week.
Maybe a week. 1 week every year. No, no
I love
internet.
to see how everyone reacts.
Yeah.
People won't know what to do with themselves,
No.
but we would. We'd know exactly
Yeah.
what to do.
Yeah.
Um, I'm worried about the survival skills of these new generations. How the heck are they going to
Yeah.
survive? Have that taken away. Uh, but that's music is a universal language.
Mm.
It goes beyond politics and politics and all of that stuff. It brings people together in union, um, and long may it last. I'm very sad. I'm very sad the way a lot of these streaming platforms are getting away with the bad side of AI, AI is an interesting thing, and
Yeah.
it's something I am observing,
Mm-hmm.
experimenting with, just to see what the
Mm-hmm.
heck it's all about.
Yeah.
It's going to make us very, very lazy. Wow, really
Totally.
lazy.
Yeah.
Critical thinking's gone out the bloody window.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
People don't really read books anymore
No.
because they can't
No.
concentrate more than
Yeah.
two sentences without getting distracted by their phone or TikTok or Instagram. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I don't know. I don't know, but I think get out there, communicate, hang out with your friends, enjoy life.
Yeah.
That's what I say to my kids anyway. And
Well, this
they're
is
really
what.
enjoying their life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a brilliant final thought to end on. In a,
I
let's.
don't know if it made sense. It's
No,
hard to
no,
answer.
no, complete sense. Honestly, just get out there. Like enjoy the natural world. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like step
get
outside
out
your
into
front
the woods.
door without your
Yeah.
phone and go for a walk. Is
Or put, I didn't have a phone. I used to hang out in the forest all the time when I was a
mm,
kid. Didn't have a phone. Did get flashed at, that was
mm,
very common back in the day. So, there's good things about having a phone, but we also need to learn to not let it take over our lives.
yeah,
You shouldn't have to be at the beck and call of everyone.
yeah,
Introspect, nature is your best nurturer.
mm, mm-hmm,
It's your mother, your father. It's everything that humans fail to give us in the ways that we need. It's just vibrations. Get out
mm.
there, fill yourself with those vibrations, spend time earthing, eat well, moderate, and then you'll end up crocheting one day plastic bags.
Well, I think that's an
That's what
even
I
better
found.
final thought, to be honest.
Well, I had to make after I've lost a lot of friends through the
mm,
scene as well.
mm-hmm,
Through going to extremes and dying too young
yeah,
because they didn't know when to stop.
mm,
And I made a vow to myself that I did want to be an old woman one day, and I did want to crochet toilet roll covers when I'm an old lady.
yeah,
And I would like to, be the kind of nanny one day that my grandchildren, when
mm,
if and when
yeah,
I can look after.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you've got to
Wow.
pace it.
Yeah.
You have to pace yourself. Really. You've got to know when to stop and
Mm-hmm.
take a break, take a beat.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't do everything all at once.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's draw a line under it there. Thank you so much for taking part. It's been amazing to chat to you.
Thank you, Matt. I
Oh,
really enjoyed that actually.